the video I made with Jana about self-regulation and getting out of freeze. I do want to say that was a recent thing that we created because every now and then she and I will just get together sitting by her pool and have a chit chat about what's going on in our practices. And these ideas come up, and we ended up realizing that so much of what a Cassandra or a person who's been carrying the weight and distress of, a neurodiverse relationship, of the avoidant attachment style of the other, the neglect, the abandonment, the overfunctioning on a practical level is it's sometimes it shows up as anger and fight. It doesn't always show up as fawning, but it can, like accommodating them. But it's a lot of freeze. Like we're just kind of numb. We just don't even know what to think or how to think, the cognitive dissonance that we can experience. And it's a particular neurostate that is, it's important to identify that, because in that state, you don't want to learn or change or grow or make the effort because you just don't have the capacity. Okay, and that is very real. That's what's kind of the trauma bond. That's the classic trauma bond freeze. The victim is now caught in the web and is stuck and shutting down. All right. And because the dysfunction, whether it's intended or not, ladies, the instability and dysfunction, as long as we keep putting weight into that, is turbulent. It's just you just can't get your footing sometimes and stop being nauseous and dizzy, right? And the more that goes on and we don't detach from it and find respite somehow, somewhere, on a more regular basis than not, we're just going to succumb, And I'll just say very quickly, there's some of you are abroad, there's I get asked a lot, by the way, about the political situation in our country. And all I want to say about it right now is that what's going on is designed to put the whole country in a state of freeze. Emotionally, mentally, psychologically, relationally. And that is exactly what I'm hearing from pretty much everybody I know. Like, they're like, I don't even want to watch the news anymore. I don't even know what's going on. Like, I'm overwhelmed. Like, what can we do about it? Like, whatever, there's a freeze going on in the world that I'm hearing about and talking to a lot of people coast to coast. That is very much what it is. And it needs to be called out, and it needs to be resisted, and it needs to be, God alone isn't going to, what I will tell you about all of attachment, God alone isn't going to just pick you out of a bad situation and rescue you and all. Even the Israelites who were invited out of Egypt had some work to do. They had to get up, they had to collect their stuff, they had to go get contributions or money from their Egyptian neighbors or whatever. They had to get on their legs and walk and go. They had to cross the Red Sea. They had to go pick up manna in the desert. And ideally, they had to get their attitude in the right place. Of course, we know many of them did not and started complaining about how much better it was to be frozen in Egypt and numb. And yeah, we were slaves, but So if we're not up to the vitality of exerting our capacity that God has given us to resist, to stand upright, to look, to seek, to knock, to find, to live, then okay, God is like, all right, you're frozen. You're not living your life to the fullest. It's not because we can, but that's the victim mentality versus the mentality of an overcomer. All right. And being an overcomer, and I'll just tell you where I'm from, my people, I tell this to my kids all the time. You're like, you were raised to be an overcomer. I'm like, they're so like, what are you talking about, Mom? I'm like, okay, my mother survived atrocities in Europe, gang raped by multiple Russians and Poles at age 18, put up against walls to be shot, starving, hepatitis B. I mean, like all kinds of stuff, survived. My father. in a Nazi prison camp for 4 years during the war because he was half Jewish. His father was Jewish. He was raised Catholic. He was a total Catholic. All right, he gets out of that. And then 3 years later, in 1948, because he was a lawyer, he was active politically with the Social Democrats, the Democratic wing, his name was on the death list that the Stalinists would have executed him if he had been in town the next day. He was given a one-day warning. When in 1948, the Stalinist putsch came, and they were all the communists backed by Russia, and they took over the Czech government, and they executed thousands of people that we never hear about this. That's what happened in the Czech Republic. And my father would have been one of them. But somebody said to him, hey, Karel, you're on the list. But that night he left the country and never could go back. Never could go back. He lived in Switzerland for 2 years, playing jazz piano, bootlegging, sweeping hallways as a jet, like whatever he could do. And then because he had an uncle in New York City, the quota opened for him. He had to go through Frankfurt to get his immigration visa, and he met my mother, who by then was a fashion student. They had coffee 10 times. She was very proud. She wasn't going to let him even buy her a cup of coffee, but she was in love. And they wrote to each other for 3 years. And then he said, okay, I'm established. He got a master's of political science from Columbia University. He started working with Swiss Air Airlines in the early 50s when it was a fledgling airline. And he arranged for her to have a position as a nanny in Montreal. All right, because she was German actually by birth. She had been raised in Poland, but she was not allowed to come into the United States. The quota hadn't opened up. So she goes to Montreal. She paid her own boat passage, sailed across the ocean, hadn't seen this guy in 3 years. Well, he goes up with the flowers, greeting the wrong woman off the boat. She's like, no, over here. Well, he married her within a month or two. And then for 14 months, she was up in Montreal working as a nanny, an au pair, sewing stuff, until the quota opened up. She could come into New York, and they became citizens right away. Me and my sisters, we grandgirls. Well, my dad changed his name from Karel Gans. Gans is a Jewish name, and he wanted not to be known as Jew because he wasn't Jewish. So he became Charles Grant. Karel Gans, Charles Grant. And I'm a Grant girl. And my sisters and I, you don't want to mess with us, guys. Okay, you can mess with us. We'll put up with it for a long time. And then we're like, no. So, my people are survivors. And I was raised not to put my head in the sand when things are happening. And even though the news is bad news, you know what? I'd rather know the bad news and have a sense of rigor about what are my options? What should I expect? What can I do on whatever level? All right, whatever level, rather than go like, oh, I don't want to watch the news. It's bad news. That was okay. That's an option. You can stay in Egypt if you want. Fine with God is like, okay, yeah, whether here's an invitation, or you can choose that. So I think the whole attachment thing, guys, it comes down to what we choose. Is it easy? No, it's not easy. No, it is not easy to detach and reattach to healthy, life-giving, positive, affirming, godly things. That is what we're called to do. The way is narrow, and few find it, Jesus said. All right? So the salmon going upstream, it's not like, it's like, no, there's some 10-foot waterfalls. There are grizzly bears who are going to eat you. It's like, it's a mission home. So whether we want to pick that up or not, that's always a decision. But let's be clear, it is a decision. Even if you don't do anything, that's a decision. Okay. And anyway, that's it. I'm off my soapbox. Thank goodness. and I'm preaching at you guys. But I just want you to know more about who I am and where these convictions come from, and how much I value what I have in this country, in this life that God has blessed me with, the eternal country of the kingdom of heaven. And I want to protect it, and I want to lift it up and talk about it with anyone else who's also seeking the kingdom today, tomorrow, and forever. And that's who you guys are. I see you as those compadres in the journey home. So, all right. So I am